We delve once more into one of humanity's most profound and persistent inquiries, the existence of God. Tonight, we expand the conversation, allowing for a deeper, more impassioned exploration of the arguments that define this age-old debate. Two keen intellects, an atheist and a believer, confront the complexities of faith, reason, suffering, and meaning.
Your point about objective morality is a classic one, but I believe it's a red herring. We don't need a divine lawgiver to recognize that inflicting unnecessary pain is wrong. Empathy, reason, and an understanding of societal well-being provide a perfectly robust foundation for ethics. We can observe the consequences of actions. Actions that promote flourishing, reduce harm, and respect sentient life are good. Those that cause needless suffering, chaos, and degradation are bad. This is an empirical and rational basis for morality evolved through millennia of social interaction. The Euthyphro dilemma, which you alluded to, remains potent. Is something good simply because God commands it, or does God command it because it is inherently good? If the latter, then goodness is a standard independent of God, accessible to all through reason. If the former, then morality becomes arbitrary. If God commanded cruelty, would that make cruelty good? As for the child and surgeon analogy, it's flawed when scaled to the problem of evil. A surgeon acts with a clear, demonstrable intent to heal, and the suffering is typically limited and directly related to a positive outcome. But what is the healing for a baby born with a horrific genetic defect who lives only a few agonizing days? What is the greater good that necessitated the Holocaust or the millions enslaved throughout history? To attribute these to some inscrutable divine plan feels like an abdication of our moral senses, a way of making God an exception to the very moral rules we expect humans to follow. It paints a picture of a God whose love and goodness are so alien they become meaningless to us.
Let me clarify. I don't believe goodness is arbitrary or that God could command what is intrinsically evil. Rather, God's very nature is the good. They are inseparable. It's not that God adheres to an external moral law. He is the source and standard of that law. Much like a perfect circle isn't obeying the definition of circularity, it embodies it. Therefore, the idea of God commanding cruelty is a contradiction in terms, like asking if a circle could be square. The Euthyphro dilemma presents a false dichotomy when applied to a being whose character is the ultimate ground of goodness. Regarding the scale of suffering, you're right, it is overwhelming, but again, our inability to perceive the entire tapestry doesn't mean there isn't one. Consider the concept of soul-making or character development. Many argue that true virtue, compassion, courage, and resilience are forged in the crucible of adversity. A world devoid of challenge, of struggle, might be a world devoid of the deepest human excellences. This isn't to say every instance of suffering is a direct lesson, but that a world structured to allow for such growth inherently involves the possibility of pain. You speak of a rational basis for morality, but reason alone doesn't provide the motivation for moral behavior, especially when it conflicts with self-interest. Why should I care about the flourishing of others if there's no ultimate accountability or inherent value to their lives beyond the material? Evolution might explain our tendency towards altruism within our in-group, but it struggles to account for truly selfless universal compassion, or the conviction that every human life has intrinsic dignity. This intrinsic sense of justice and the value of every individual life, I argue, resonates more deeply with a worldview where humans are created in the image of a moral God, rather than being accidental byproducts of a blind cosmic process.
You speak of a moral law written on our hearts, but what if that writing is the product of cultural evolution, reason, and our innate capacity for empathy, rather than a divine inscription? The fact that moral codes vary across cultures and time and are often subject to intense debate and revision suggests they are human constructs, albeit vital ones. If morality was a direct edict from an unchanging God, wouldn't we expect more uniformity and clarity? Instead, we see religious texts themselves interpreted in vastly different ways to support conflicting moral positions. Consider the issue of slavery, once widely accepted and even justified by religious texts, now almost universally condemned. This moral progress seems driven by human reason and empathy, challenging established norms, including religiously sanctioned ones. Furthermore, God is all-powerful and allows natural disasters like earthquakes and tsunamis, which indiscriminately kill and maim. How is this different from an intentional act of harm from our perspective? An omnipotent being who sets the laws of nature in motion, knowing they will cause such devastation, bears a different kind of responsibility than a being with no control. You can't simply attribute it to nature when the architect of nature is supposedly God.
The development of our understanding of moral principles doesn't negate their ultimate divine origin. Our understanding of the physical laws of the universe has also evolved dramatically, but that doesn't mean the laws themselves have changed or weren't established. Perhaps our grasp of divine moral law is also a progressive revelation, unfolding as humanity matures. Regarding natural disasters, it's a profound challenge. However, to demand a world where God constantly intervenes to prevent every negative consequence of natural laws is to ask for a world without consistent laws at all, a chaotic, unpredictable existence where cause and effect are meaningless. The very regularity of natural laws that allows for science and understanding also, tragically, allows for events that cause suffering. Perhaps this consistent framework, even with its harsh possibilities, is necessary for a universe where free and responsible agents can exist and make meaningful choices. If every potential harm were miraculously averted, would our choices have any real weight? Would there be any impetus for courage, for compassion in the face of another's misfortune, for the scientific endeavor to understand and mitigate such disasters? The fine-tuning of these natural laws to allow for life in the first place is another aspect to consider. A universe so precisely balanced that even minute changes would preclude existence. This points, for many, not to a chaotic accident, but to an intelligent designer.
The fine-tuning argument is intriguing, but it has plausible counter-explanations. The anthropic principle suggests that, of course, we observe a universe compatible with life because if it weren't, we wouldn't be here to observe it. Furthermore, the idea of a multiverse, while speculative, proposes that our universe might be just one of countless others with varying physical constants, and we simply inhabit one where conditions allowed for our emergence. No designer needed, just probabilistic inevitability. As for consistent natural laws, an omnipotent God, by definition, wouldn't be bound by the limitations of a human programmer who has to let code run its course. Such a God could, presumably, design laws that are both consistent and inherently less prone to causing gratuitous suffering, or could intervene in ways that are not disruptive to the overall order, but are compassionate in specific instances. The sheer avoidability of so much suffering from the perspective of an all-powerful being is what remains so troubling. And if our choices only have weight because of the possibility of immense suffering, it again paints a picture of a God who uses a very blunt and brutal instrument for moral education. Why not a world where challenges are proportional, where growth occurs without utter devastation?
Defining God as a necessary being and then concluding he must exist because he is so defined feels like a semantic argument, not a proof of actual existence in reality. I could define a perfectly existent unicorn as a unicorn whose essence includes existence, but that doesn't conjure one into my garden. The question, why is there something rather than nothing, is indeed a profound philosophical puzzle. But positing God as the answer simply pushes the question back, why is there God rather than nothing? If you say God is uncaused, why can't the universe or the fundamental laws of physics themselves be uncaused, existing eternally or arising from a quantum vacuum, as some cosmological theories propose? As for scientific theories being untestable, like some aspects of multiverse theory, The difference is that these theories often emerge from existing, well-tested physics, like string theory or inflationary cosmology. They actively seek ways to find indirect evidence. Religious claims, on the other hand, often rest on ancient texts, personal revelation, or tradition, which are not subject to the same kind of empirical verification or falsification. When scientific understanding changes, it's usually because new evidence has overturned old theories. When religious understanding changes, it often seems to be in response to external pressure from science or societal shifts, reinterpreting texts to fit new knowledge. This suggests that religion is following, not leading, in the quest for truth about reality.
Even if the Big Bang points to a beginning, that doesn't automatically lead to the specific kind of personal, intervening God most religions propose. It could point to an unknown, naturalistic mechanism. And the why questions, meaning, purpose, I believe are human-generated. We create meaning. We define our purpose. The universe itself is indifferent to our search for it. To say science cannot address them is true in one sense, but psychology, sociology, and philosophy, all drawing on rational inquiry, can explore why humans seek meaning and how we construct it. The idea that our reason, if a product of unguided evolution, cannot be trusted is a self-defeating argument, as you are using that same reason to argue for God's existence. Our ability to do science, to understand complex mathematics, to create art and philosophy demonstrates that human reason, however it arose, is a powerful tool for understanding reality. If religion provides answers that are not testable, that shift with external pressures, and that vary so dramatically across cultures, it seems a less reliable guide than the rigorous, self-correcting methods of scientific and rational inquiry. The comfort religion may offer doesn't equate to its truth.
The fact that we can create meaning, that we do search for purpose, and that we are capable of profound moral reasoning and understanding complex truths about the universe, this very capacity, I argue, is more plausibly explained by our being more than just accidental configurations of atoms. If we are products of a mind, God's mind, then it makes sense that our minds can grasp aspects of reality and truth. If we are merely products of a mindless process, then the alignment of our cognitive faculties with truth becomes a fortunate coincidence, particularly for abstract truths not directly tied to immediate survival. Science is a magnificent tool, and I celebrate its achievements. But its domain is the observable, measurable, material world. To limit all of reality to what science can currently measure is a philosophical stance, scientism, not a scientific finding. There are realms of human experience: love, beauty, justice, the numinous, the longing for transcendence that, while perhaps having correlates in brain activity, are not reducible to mere chemical reactions without losing their deepest significance. Religion, at its best, speaks to these dimensions, offering a framework that integrates our rational, emotional, and spiritual faculties and provides a narrative that makes sense of our deepest intuitions about meaning, value, and our place in the cosmos.
The arguments are profound, the questions enduring. This dialogue, in its expanded form, highlights the depth and complexity of a debate that touches the core of human experience. It doesn't offer easy answers, but rather invites us to continue our own thoughtful exploration of these ultimate questions.